I'm singer, songwriter, producer Nick DiMatteo, and welcome to Season 8, Episode 23 of Music is Not a Genre, MxG. This week's episode, Boy Bands, Part 2, Big Time Success. Again, not going to waste a lot of time here going into too much, except to say that thank you for watching and listening. Like, share, subscribe, rate, review, please. Tell somebody about this show. Word of mouth is better than anything, really. And I do have, let's see, when will this air? Probably the same week or close to it. I'm doing a solo rec show, the live video album presentation of KITE to CAMDEN on Saturday, June 13th at 8 p.m. in NYC. Tickets are only $5. Please go to nickdimatteo.com/live to check out the information for that and come see it. It'll be like nothing you've seen. Certainly not from Rec. And don't forget Rec's album, Rec the Singles, is out right now and it's doing surprisingly well. So please, nickdimatteo.com/music to check all of that out. Let's get back to the topic. Boy bands, Part 2, Big Time Success. So, why this? Well, because I couldn't fit everything in Part 1. And I mentioned in Part 1 how big a fan I've been of boy bands off and on since the 80s at least, and how they have influenced me and etc. I followed the development of the form nonstop, really. There are very few boy bands that have broken the U.S. that have escaped my interest, let's say. But why is this second part subtitled Big Time Success? Well, A, because they cannot be contained, because right now boy bands are huge and have been off and on for quite a while, and we'll get to that when we pick up the history. But also, of course, Big Time Success uses the initials BTS, so, And it also alludes to a boy band, Big Time Rush, who I will mention later. So that's why I did that subtitle. So, show format for this Part 2. As mentioned, I'll pick up the history in the mid-1990s and through to today. Then I will do some global conclusions, including my favorite boy bands from each era. And then a featured song and questions for you. And then, of course, the bonus I'm extra. Patreon.com/music is not a genre is your second bonus for this topic. And it is on the history of K-Pop. So connected to boy bands and to United States music and so much richer and longer than you know. K-pop goes way, way, way back, and I do the prehistory and the history and talk about how it's influenced the music globally. Again, the bonus I'm extra at patreon.com/music is not a genre. Sources, same as last week, Google, Wikipedia, youdiscovermusic.com, Entertainment Weekly. Disclaimers are also same as last week. Cannot mention every boy band from every era, but my list is fairly comprehensive and has a good cross-section. I have not listened to every good song or great song from every band, but enough to give you a flavor of what the bands sound like. I will be biased based on my own preferences. I'm not going to spend a lot of time on abuse again, but of course, two of the bands that I will mention right off are going to be have been embroiled in that or were. But I'm going to keep this about the music. So let's continue the history. We're picking up in the mid-1990s, just after the grunge era, which was not the biggest for boy bands, but also after Boyz II Men, who have very heavily influenced future boy band sound. So there was movement during that period, for sure. These next two bands, honestly, could have been the whole 2 episodes for some people, and for a time were the only 2 boy bands that people knew or mentioned. And of course, the first one is Backstreet Boys, formed in 1993 in Orlando. Nick Carter, Howie Dorough, AJ McLean, and cousins Brian Luttrell and Kevin Richardson. Again, some family here. More often than not, there's family in some version of boy bands. They were already forming, and then members solo and in various groups auditioned for the infamous Lou Pearlman. See the documentary Dirty Pop on Netflix to talk about, if you want to talk about the actual exploitation and abuse. They were auditioning for a group that would mix New Kids on the Block style with Boyz II Men's sound. So a leap forward in style and sound. Backstreet have released 10 albums, starting with 1996's eponymous album, and their most recent one so far in 2022. The first two might have been ineligible to chart in the US or weren't really released here widely, but they were number 1 or top 10 in most other countries. Maybe they were kind of proving themselves overseas before breaking out here. Of the remaining albums, all but one have reached the top 10, and 3 of them have gone to number 1. They put out a few singles in 95, 96 that didn't do much in the States, but were killing it overseas, which is significant for now and later. And then they put Quit Playing Games With My Heart, number 2 in 96, and they never looked back. Street. They followed that up with a bunch of top 10 singles and a bunch more top 40 through the mid-2000s. Their last charting single in the US was actually in 2018, so far, and worldwide the following year. Though they also released a 2025 single, Hey, a little ploddy for my tastes, but I thought most of their music was a little ploddy, but still good. All 5 members have had solo careers, with Nick Carter having the most success. Last week's bonus was on that. Not sure what more I need to say about such a famous band, except that they were the first boy band of the modern era, taking cues, as Lou Pearlman said, from those other 2 mega bands and putting them together. And that was the step that would shape all future mega boy bands, if not all boy bands ever since. And of course, the second band that you have to mention is NSYNC. You tell me whether or not I said the asterisk there at the beginning. I don't know. They formed in 1995, also in Orlando. Chris Kirkpatrick, J.C. Chazé, Joey Fatone, Justin Timberlake, and Jason Galasso, who soon left and was replaced by Lance Bass, yet another prominent gay member, like Jonathan Knight, I believe it is, and Ricky Martin, and others, I'm sure. Again, Lou Pearlman's slimy but temporarily effective hand. He saw Kirkpatrick's group perform and said he'd sign them if he could add more members, which he did. They released only 4 albums from 97 to 2001, all top 10, and the last 2 number 1. Unlike Backstreet, they didn't stay together. They broke up in 2002 as Timberlake embarked on a solo career. I know there's more to the story, and they did a reunion tour and all that stuff. But this kind of stuff, that doesn't interest me because it's too far from the music. You can look it up. Their reunion in 2023-24 for the tour was big. They may be considering doing another album, by the way, which would be cool. I wonder if Justin will go with them there. Though around for less than Backstreet, most people would say NSYNC were the more successful of the 2. Kind of think of NSYNC as the Beatles and the Backstreet as the Stones, both worthy of respect. One went longer, but the one who went shorter is usually considered more successful. They released I Want You Back, also the title of the first hit sung by the Jackson 5, though not designed to echo that and not a cover of that, which is weird to me that somebody must have mentioned that. Number 13 was a big out-of-the-gate hit. They released a bunch more singles in the late 90s, only 2 of which made the top 10. Several did not chart at all in the U.S., but then Bye Bye Bye, kicking out Lou Pearlman, number 4, brought them back big time, partly because they got out under the thumb of him and took charge of their own music. In terms of feel and production, this song reflects that. Again, check out that documentary for more info. They then had 3 more top 10 hits through 2002, 2 top 20, and released a single in 2023, Better Place, for a Trolls movie. I like this one better than the recent Backstreet single, but it went to number 25, actually. I tended to like NSYNC better than Backstreet Boys anyway. Though all 5 members have been successful since the breakup, only Justin Timberlake and J.C. Chazé have music solo careers. Others have had other types of success. And you know whose was bigger. Again, not sure I need to say any more, other than that NSYNC was both the biggest modern-day boy band and the peak of that third wave. So the peak of peak boy band, which is why they're mentioned so often. And after them, things started to shift, started to phase out. We're going to get to that soon. Also, both of these bands had Max Martin working for them, huge mover. I talked about him in my Great Producers of the 2000s episode. His domination would continue through that decade, through well beyond boy bands. This next band kind of foretold how boy bands would change in the fourth wave, both looking forward and looking back. And that is the brother group Hanson, formed in 1992, singing a cappella very early on, and initially known as the Hanson Brothers. Very reminiscent of the way Hudson Brothers changed, although I guess backwards. Isaac, Taylor, and Zach eventually started playing instruments and recorded 2 demo albums in 95 and 96. The second, titled Bop, contained early versions of songs that would end up on their major label debut in 1997, Middle of Nowhere, including Bop, of course. They released 14 albums in total through 2024 so far and have never stopped recording and performing, adding more members to their live band in 2007. They were not one-hit wonders. They scored 3 top 20 hits, 2 in the top 10, including Bop and I Will Come to You, and several other hits in other countries, with the last charting U.S. hit being this time around, which was number 20 in 2000. And their last hit anywhere was Go in 2007, which hit number 44 in the UK. I say they foretold the future because after the hugeness of vocal-only boy bands from the very early 80s through the early 2000s, the boy band template would fracture. Some retaining that vocal pop, R&B, rap structure, and others following Hanson by playing instruments and doing more rock-oriented music. And this, of course, was also a throwback to the boy bands of the 1970s in particular. My cover band has done Hanson's updated version of Bop. The drummer liked it a lot. None of the rest of us really enjoyed it. I like the song a lot. I just think we needed to do something different with it. The final band of this era to hit big in the U.S. with the same template was 98 Degrees. The same template meaning Backstreet, whatever. Formed in 96, and contrary to most other boy bands, they formed themselves. Jeff Timmons started them, first with Nick Lachey, then Justin Jeffrey, then Jonathan Lipman, later replaced by Nick's brother Drew Lachey. They were inspired by Boyz II Men, Take 6, who also inspired Boyz II Men, and Jodeci. So great influences. They released 4 albums during their main run through 2002. Charted 97, 145 was their eponymous album. But then 98 Degrees and Rising charted number 14 in 1998. And then they had a Christmas album in 2000, number 27. The 2000's Revelation, was that 9? I don't know what year that was. 2000's Revelation was their highest charting at number 2. Then released 3 more albums in 2013, 17, and 25. The 2013 album charted at number 65. They released singles from the start through 2025, charting only up until 2000, with 7 in the top 40 and 4 of those in the top 5. Thank God I Found You was their only number 1. They were certainly everywhere during the late 90s. Pretty much the easy listening boy band is the way I would describe them. I do like their 2025 singles sound, though. Stranger Things Have Happened. Check that out. Both Nick and Jeff Timmons had solo careers, with Nick having major hits in the early 2000s. Finally, in this era, a couple of footnotes for the U.S., though for sure not elsewhere. Westlife, formed in Dublin in 98. I guess a follow-up to Boyzone. Nicky Byrne, Shane Fillon, Kian Egan, and Mark Feely. Brian McFadden was a member of the band before leaving to pursue a solo career in March 2004. 3 of them were in a band the year before, 6 as One, with 3 others. Later renamed YOU. The manager of Boyzone liked them, but Simon Cowell said no until they fired the 3 ugliest members and auditioned others. I'm using that word because I'm sure that frickin' Simon Cowell did too. They renamed West Side and then Westlife, because someone else had the West Side. They were together until 2012, and then they reunited in 2018 and have been together since. They released 12 albums, starting with the eponymous in 1999, continuing up to 2021 so far. None have charted in the US, but all were top 3 in Ireland and the UK, with most of them hitting number 1. Westlife is a mega success, despite us not knowing them. Starting in 99 with Swear It Again, the only single to hit the US charts at number 20. I don't recall it. I listened to it. I don't remember it. They had a slew of top 20 hits in Ireland, with most hitting top 5 and 12 of them hitting number 1. I'd say if Backstreet was a softer version of NSYNC, Westlife is a softer version of Backstreet with a tiny bit of Irish flair. Decent mix of sound, but not my bag. Next band, BB Mac, formed in 1996 in Liverpool. Their first run lasted until 2003, and then they reunited in 2018 and have stayed together. Christian Burns, Mark Barry, Stephen McNally. So B, Mac, Burns, Barry, McNally, BB Mac. They released 3 albums, 2 in their first run, Sooner or Later in 2000, which was the number 16 UK, number 38 US. And Into Your Head in 2002, number 25 only in the US. Or was that UK? I don't know. Then Power Station in 2019. They released 13 singles, 5 in their first run and 8 more since so far. 2 singles hit the top 10 in the UK and another hit top 40. 1 single, Back Here, their biggest hit, and I do remember that song, hit number 13 in the US, and 2 others in the 50s in the US. So they have more success in the US than Westlife, for sure. They're more kind of in the light rock category than R&B, which is another indication of how boy bands were. Some of them were going heavier R&B and hip-hop. Some were leaning more rock. Worth the listen if you like boy band and pop stuff. So the rest of the 2000s, the fourth wave, the exploding structure, and exploding here means the boy band thing blew up here and elsewhere. So there's far too many to dive into. I will mention all the ones I think are significant, but only flesh out a few of them. O-Town, formed on the first season of making the band in 2000. Eric Michael Estrada, Trevor Pennick, Jacob Underwood, and Dan Miller. Also included Ashley Parker, Angel, and Ikaika Kahoano, who was replaced by Miller after dropping out of the group. They snuck in and had some hits and fame just as the boy band craze was dying. That's why we still remember them. They broke up in 2003 and reunited in 2013, still going. They could be considered, I think, the final echo of that third wave, but they're more the fourth wave because they have reality show origins. Just became a big factor. X Factor. They released only 2 albums during their first run. Eponymous in 2001, which hit number 5, and O2 in 2002, which hit number 28. They also released albums in 2014 and 2019. 6 singles during their first run. First 2 top 10 and another at 64, and then 4 singles in their second run. They haven't charted, but they've streamed. Again, they're basically easy listening. They're a mix of light rock, pop, R&B, and a bit of country folk. Their 2019 song is a nice EDM update. I like it. All members have had solo careers, with Ashley Parker Angel the most successful, had a top 5 album and runs on Broadway. It's interesting that true to their mishmash style, each member did slightly different solo music. R&B, pop, country, and rock. All 4 did something different. And then their sound is all of those together. Another band, B2K, formed in 1998 until 2004. Then they popped together a little bit in the teens and then reformed last year. Jarrell J. Boog Houston, Demario Rasby Thornton, and Drew Pierre Lil Fizz Frederick were in a group called Melodic, formed by the choreographer Dave Scott. You can see how big dance was becoming a part of all this by this point. In '99, they formed on New Year's Eve. That's why they're called B2K, I guess. Omarion Grandberry was invited to join and changed their name. Boys of the New Millennium is why it's called that. And also Boys to Men, B2K. You know, they're the first band on this list since Boys to Men who are all African American. They released 3 albums, all of them in 2002. B2K would hit number 2. Their Christmas album, number 132. And Pandemonium hit number 10. They released 8 singles through 2004, all charted in some way, with 4 in the top 40, and their number 1, Bump Bump Bump, featuring P. Diddy, which I think is a good song, despite P. Diddy being part of it. Heavy R&B sound, and I prefer it a lot to a lot of the washed-out sounds of this boy band era. I didn't know them as well back then. I remember the name vaguely. Don't remember them certainly as much as like O-Town and 98 Degrees, but I remember them probably about as much as BB Mac. But I like their sound a lot more than most of those, if not all of them. All 4 members went solo, with Omarion having by far the most success. He had 2 number 1 albums. Hopping overseas again, a bit before overseas would dominate, we get a band I never heard of called Blue. Formed in London in 2000, stuck it out till 2005, and got back together in 2011 and are still going. Lee Ryan, Anthony Costa, Simon Webb, Duncan James. Unlike some of these non-US bands, Blue never crossed the pond, never had any success here. They released 3 albums during their first run, all of which hit number 1 in the UK, and then 4 more albums from 2013 till 2026. and have hit number 13, number 13, number 22, and this year's album hit number freaking 2 in the UK. Tons of singles from 01 to this year, 11 of them top 10 UK and 2 more in top 20. Most of those were top 5 and 3 of them were number 1. As far as the general middle-of-the-road sounds these bands serve up, theirs is the most interesting to me. There's a nice mix of actually different voices and nice genre crossovers. Probably because I tend to find British production more interesting anyway, but I just think in general, their sound, Blue, is more interesting to me than, Westlife and a lot of those others. And finally, 3 of the members had solo careers. Simon Webb was the most successful, scoring several top 20 songs. And finally, in the 2000s, a band that to me, took their cue from Hanson and gave boy bands permission to add rock in again. And again, no judgment either way. Jonas Brothers, Joe, Kevin, and Nick, formed in 2005 in Wyckoff, New Jersey. I will be playing Wyckoff, New Jersey with my cover band sometime this summer. They ran through 2013 at first, including lots of Disney Channel appearances. They had a 2-season show, which I watched with my kids. It was very Monkees-ish, very funny. Worth watching, I think, especially the first season. They reformed in 2019 and have been going super strong ever since. 4 albums in their first run, 3 in the top 5. 2 of those were number 1. Since 2019, they've released 3 more albums, charting number 1, number 3, and number 6. So they are actual big successes. Lots of other albums too, compilations, Christmas album soundtracks, including a Christmas movie soundtrack from last year, which I didn't love. Hell of a lot of singles from 05 to 2025, excluding that hiatus, with an interesting arc. The first 2 didn't chart, then a couple sorta did. Then SOS hit number 17 in 2007, and some others. Then number 5, Burnin' Up in 2008, which was their big one really. Tonight, that same year, hit number 8. A few others to 2013, but they didn't hit their first number 1 song until 2019 with Sucker, which is a great song. And a whole bunch of other singles since then, with 6 of them have hit the top 40. I don't know of another band whose success was that much earlier that has come back as strongly as the Jonas Brothers. In fact, their second run has been stronger than their first run. I don't think that's ever happened with any of these other boy bands. The last single to chart anywhere so far was last year's No Time to Talk, number 27, US Pop. Their songs run the range stylistically. They go into R&B and pop and electronic, but they often do a lot of rock, and they play their own instruments often, including live. All 3 members have had solo careers, with Nick's being the most successful as both a musician and an actor. I'm not going to say much more about them because they're so famous, except props to my Jersey compatriots. Leads us to the 2010s, the global comeback. You can consider the last half to 2/3 of the 2000s as a serious nadir for boy bands, similar to the late 1970s. In that quiet time, the boy band idea was still bubbling under, and interest and power would shift overseas. Once those overseas bands hit in the U.S. as well, the first significant non-U.S. boy band presence since the Bay City Rollers, that gave the U.S. permission to try again. And with that in mind, it's no wonder that boy bands of all kinds exploded in the 2010s. And so my coverage of them will be a bit briefer so I can fit them all in and still stay close to time. So first band to me is Nickelodeon's answer to the Jonas Brothers, and that is Big Time Rush, BTR. Before BTS. They were basically the Monkees of their time. Nickelodeon wanted a comedy show about a band and did a nationwide search for talent, ending with Kendall Schmidt, James Maslow, Carlos Penavega, and Logan Henderson. Because my kids were at the perfect age then, I saw lots and lots of this show, and I thought it was really entertaining and really funny, and I enjoyed the music, more kinetic than the Jonas Brothers show, and it ran longer, 4 seasons, from 2009 to 2013. They were and are very much a rock, pop, electro, R&B hybrid band. Active 2009 to 2014, and then reformed in 2021 and are still going. They released 4 albums. In 2010, reached number 3. 2011, reached number 12. 2013's reached number 4. And they released an album in 2023 as well. They've had over 15 singles. Only 2 charted in the U.S. main in the bottom 50. 3 charted U.S. Pop Top 40, Boyfriend, Music Sounds Better With You, and Windows Down. Recent singles are very nice. Actually, I don't love them, but I do like them. Their self-titled song, Big Time Rush, which was the theme of their show, as was their first album overall, was very listenable. I owned the CD because of my kids. Not at all middle of the road. I really enjoy it. I think you should listen to Big Time Rush. At least 3 of the members have had middling solo careers. But now, before we get to the break, let's hop over the pond for a few. The Wanted hail from the UK and Ireland. Max George, Shiva Kanaswaran, Jay McGuinness, Tom Parker, and Nathan Sykes formed in 2009 through mass auditions. They lasted through 2014 and then reunited in 2021. Tom Parker did die of brain tumor in 2022. So one of the rare boy band members who have died tragically, but they are still together otherwise. Noticeable that lots of boy bands who broke up ended reuniting in the late teens and early 20s. Early 2020s. And I can't help but think that some of them were motivated by the pandemic, but others, I think, motivated by the rise of K-pop. Released 3 albums, 2010, 2013, all hit top 10 in the UK, and their third album hit number 17 in the US. That's why I've heard of The Wanted, I believe. They sound very much like a Coldplay-influenced band with more EDM involved. 13 singles through 2014, and then 2 more since then, including a memorial. Tom Parker. I'm sorry. Did I say Tom Parker? It isn't Tom Parker. Wow. What a coincidence. No relation. I don't think so anyway. 10 top 10 hits in the UK, 4 charting singles in the US, including number 3's Glad You Came. Good song. Like it a lot. I think I remember Chasing the Sun, which hit number 2 in the UK and number 50 in the US. Several members had solo careers, the most successful being Nathan Sykes, who also had success in the US. Okay, the next band from overseas, this may be the last thing I mention before the break, I don't know, is of course One Direction. How much do I really need to say? They were around 2010 to 2016. Simon Cowell formed them. Niall Horan, Zayn Malik, Liam Payne, R.I.P., Harry Styles, and Louis Tomlinson. They've all had solo careers. Of course, Harry. Again, if you don't know them, why are you listening to If you don't know them, you definitely haven't been listening to these boy band episodes and haven't been a part of the world. The biggest takeaway is that One Direction revived boy bands in the US. Prior to BTS, they were far and away the most successful non-US boy band here and the most successful since NSYNC. Or in general, like period, from anywhere since NSYNC. 5 albums, all hit number 1 or 2 in both the US and the UK, and just about every other country they were released in. 17 singles, most charted top 10 in the UK, with 4 number 1s and 6 more in the top 5. So 10 of them in the top 5. Most of those singles also charted in the US, though generally lower. 6 of them in the top 10, though. None of them number 1. But the biggest hits here were Best Song Ever, number 2. Live While You're Young and Drag Me Down were both number 3. What Makes You Beautiful is the one I think everybody knows, number 4. Story of My Life, number 6. Perfect hit 10. I generally like a lot of these, if not all, and have mostly loved Harry's solo work, too. I'm probably going to do a review of his recent album when I do a future Quick Takes from the Continuum. Again, if you don't know about them, then you gotta roll that stone from the cave entrance and get out into the world. So that's all I need to say about them. One more British Isles band, the Vamps. Started in 2012 and are still going. One of those boy bands that's an actual band playing their own instruments. Bradley Simpson, James Britton McVeigh, Connor Ball, and Tristan Evans. 5 albums, all hit top 10 in the UK, 2 of them number 1 and 2 number 2. Their first album hit top 40 in the US. Many singles through 2020 so far, 5 top 10 UK and a few more top 40. None of them charted in the US, though Somebody to You did make some waves here. Kind of that thumping folk pop rock that was popular in the early 2010s, generally rock pop with some electro and a twinge of R&B. I actually like the Vamps' sound quite a bit. A bit of solo stuff, but they've been together ever since. So staying overseas, but going where the action was and still is for boy bands. I'm going to make a little intro to this Before we take our mid-break, South Korea. South Korea's been making great pop music about as long as Japan has been making great rock pop music. I'll probably do an episode of J-pop one day. I should. I've been a fan of it for decades. But consider this the entry to the bonus M Extra on patreon.com/musicisnotagenre. For this episode is the history of K-pop. Please check it out. Patreon.com/musicisnotagenre. I had a great amount of fun researching it. Though far from the first boy band out of South Korea, SHINee could be considered the first in the modern era and the first true precursors to what was to come. My son was a big fan of theirs for a while too. They formed in 2008 and are still going. They were 5 members: Onu, Ki, Minho, and Taemin, and Jonghyun, who died in 2017. So some tragedy there. 8 Korean albums and 5 Japanese albums. 2008-2023 with an EP is due this June. Almost all those were number 1 or 2 in their respective countries. Many of the Korean albums also reached top 5 US world. Singles also started in 2008, and their first hit, number 12 US world, starting in 2010. All of their singles have hit top 20 US world, with most in the top 5 and several number 1s in Korea. And I may have put this later in my notes, but I'll say it now. All of these bands from South Korea, they have to, they're compelled to make a mark in Japan as well. So they will almost always release Korean album, Japanese album. More Korean albums, but a significant amount of Japanese albums. So I will be mentioning that again. And I will mention more of that. I was going to take a break, but let's do one more. EXO debuted, that's EXO, debuted in 2012 and are still going. As is characteristic of K-pop bands, they're big. 9 members. As is also characteristic, they mostly perform songs in Korean as well as Chinese and Japanese, but also English, and have had hits in all of those languages. Multicultural. Started by the same company as SHINee, SM Entertainment, big in K-pop. They've had spin-off bands. They've had solo stuff. 8 albums through 2026. All of them hit number 1 in Korea. 5 hit number 1 on the US World Chart, with only 3 reaching top 100 on the US main. The highest, number 23's Don't Mess Up My Tempo in 2018. Expected mix of musical influences, EDM heavy, though generally slower paced. I like the sound. They're jazzier than you would think. Always something unexpected in Korean production. And we'll get to more of that after the break. Hey, MxG fans, thank you as always for watching and listening. Listeners, go to youtube.com/@musicisnotagenre. You get a video for every episode of this podcast. Watchers, go to nickdamadio.com/musicisnotagenre if you would rather just listen. And everyone, please take some time out to go to patreon.com/musicisnotagenre to support this podcast, my band rec, and everything I do for as little as $1 a month. Speaking of everything I do, nickdamadio.com really does have it all. If you're interested in unique and quirky t-shirts that I've all personally hand designed, go to nickdamadio.com/shop and you can find it all there, including discounts if you sign up for my newsletter or Patreon. If you're someone who's always wanted to write a song, has just never figured out how to get there, let me work with you. I am the Song Coach. Go to nickdamadio.com/thesongcoach, and whether you're a complete beginner or completely advanced, I can get you there. You can book a free 30-minute call right there on the site. And of course, I am always releasing new music. Go to nickdamadio.com/music to find it all. My complete discography is there. All of the social links are there. And of course, please like, share, subscribe, rate, review. Do it for the podcast. Do it for the music. Sharing is especially valuable to all of us indie creators. I really appreciate your support, your eyes and ears. Thank you for hanging with me for this mid-roll, and let's get back to the show. All right, I'll tell you what. If I could produce these in some other way, I absolutely would, because these batch cooking days are exhausting. But that said, let's get back to coverage here to start with one of the main reasons for these boy band episodes. BTS, also known as Bangtan Boys, Bangtan Sonyeondan, which means Bulletproof Boy Scouts. Didn't know that. Formed in 2010, debuted 2013, and other than their military service, have been going strong ever since. There's 7 members: Jin, Suga, J-Hope, RM, Jimin, V, and Jungkook, all of whom have released solo work, which I mentioned in last week's bonus. most successful are Jungkook and Jimin, have released 6 Korean albums, 4 Japanese albums, all have English, but not as the primary language. Their new album, Arirang, came out in March. I love the song Swim. I love it. I love the album production in general, too. A lot of mid-tempo songs, though. It's so popular these days. I will review the BTS album in my future quick takes from the Continuum. They released a bunch of EPs as well. They have had so many singles since 2013. Their first top 10 in Korea was their 8th single, and they went on to score 20 top 10 there, including their recent single. The first single in 2013 scored #1 U.S. World, and lots on that chart would follow. Their first single to hit U.S. main was in 2017. Their first top 10 in 2018. And they've had 9 top 10 U.S. main singles, and 6 of them have hit #1 since 2020. They've done lots of collabs with big stars. I would say they're more rap heavy than most K-pop artists, all of whom do have some rap. That's kind of prerequisite. Like I said, ever since New Edition, that's been a part of not every boy band, but the quintessential boy bands. Very heavy R&B electro sound, but always they add in something unexpected. Again, Korean production. Do I really need to discuss them more? If I do, then again, you're deliberately ignoring the world. Note that there is a real machine in Korea that finds and trains music artists. And from what I've read, they're pretty regimented, but not abusive from what I've heard. They could be, I don't know. Also, many boy bands and girl groups actually have Korean heritage members from non-Korean countries like the U.S. Another big band, GOT7, 2014 to present. 7 members, again, okay, GOT7, Mark, JB, Jackson, Jin Young, Youngjae, Bam Bam, and Yogyum. 5 albums through 2020 and a ton of EPs, 4 top 10 albums in Korea, 4 U.S. World, bunch of Korean singles, and a few in Japan as well. All Korean singles also charted U.S. World, too. I don't think they're really being marketed here as much, at least not like BTS. But all but 2 of their U.S. World hits were in the top 10. And I honestly, secret, prefer GOT7's overall sound to BTS's overall sound. They're a little more daring to me. All 7 members have had solo careers to one degree and another. Final Korean band in this section, at least, and there is more to come. 17, or SVT, started in 2015. Literally almost that many members. And you'll understand why they're named that in a bit. 13 members. S8Ep, or Koo, Junghan, Joshua, Jun, Hoshi, Wonwoo, Woozi, DK, Mingyu, The 8, Seungkwan, Vernon, and Dino. Their name means 13 members, 3 teams of singers coming together to form one group. So 13, 3, 1 adds up to 17. And it is a frequent thing in recent years that larger groups would break off to form different teams, and then you have different releases and different successes, etc. They 17 have released 5 albums through 2025 so far, all #1 in Korea and 3 #1 in the U.S. World. Most recent 2 even charted top 10 in the U.S. main, riding that BTS success. Many singles, lots of top 20 in Korea, and the last several top 10, with the last 4 their first #1s in Korea. So they're rising. They are rising. Most charted U.S. World top 10, and a few Japanese singles as well, all top 40, several #1s. A bit more of a rave EDM sound, definitely more high energy than BTS. BTS is more romantic, I guess you can say. Several members have released solo mixtapes, but none have officially gone solo. They are not the last Korean band I will mention, but the last for now. Again, bonus M extra, patreon.com/music's not a genre. K-pop, the entire history of K-pop, even before K-pop. Lest we forget that boy bands are everywhere, here's one not from the US, UK, or Korea. Well, actually, wait a minute. I'd say not from the US, but it looks like they are. CNCO, formed in 2015 in Miami and disbanded in 2023. They won the first season of La Banda and got a 5-year contract with Sony. Richard Camacho, Eric Brian Colon, Christopher Velez, and Zabdiel de Jesus, Joel de Leon, formerly Pimentel, was a member until his departure in 2021. Members are from the U.S., including Newark and NYC and Cuba. 4 albums through 2022. First 2 reached top 40 in the U.S. and number 1 U.S. Latin. Extensive amount of singles. None hit the U.S. main charts, but many hit U.S. Latin top 40. And several hit U.S. Latin pop top 5, including 2 at number 1. Their last 13 singles didn't chart at all. Heavily reggaeton and Latin pop, singing almost exclusively in Spanish, which is probably why they haven't charted much. Back then, and now with Bad Bunny, you can sing in Spanish, it's going to chart. And Rosalia. Not my sound, but you can understand why they were successful. Most members have pursued solo careers. And finally, in the 2010s, we have an outlier. Brockhampton. Technically, they're not a boy band by any stretch, except that they call themselves that. So then they are. Which shows you, A, how much the concept of boy band has morphed, and especially B, how much it's bounced back and been embraced and respected even outside the circle, despite its so-called, twee origins. And C, that the concept of boy band was becoming more and more alt, which is still happening. Brockhampton active 2014 to 2022. They're from Texas, primarily hip-hop, alt, hip-hop, R&B with some pop. They've had upwards of 15 members, ending with a few less than they started. Quoting Wikipedia, the group's final lineup included vocalists Kevin Abstract, Matt Champion, Merlin Wood, and Dom McLennan, producers vocalists Joba Bareface and Jabari Manwa, producers Romil Hemnani and Kiko Merli, graphic designer Henok Sileshi HK, photographer Ashlan Gray, web designer Roberto Ontenient, and manager John Nunez. And they're more like a collective, like the ASAP collective and things like that, like Element 6 even. They're as much a collective as a group. They released 8 albums, all but the first one charted, 5 of them in the top 20. Ginger charted number 3 and Iridescence number 1. They've had at least 20 singles. Sugar from 2019 charted because there was a Dua Lipa collab and reached number 66. I love their sound overall. When I first discovered them, I believe it was in 2022 or 1. I was really enamored of them because they just seem so different to me. Many members have had solo careers, especially since the breakup. But before we hit the 20s, I have to make a special mention of Pentatonics, because even though they're not a boy band, they're mixed gender, they have 100% continued the vocal group tradition, especially the a cappella wing of that tradition, and were probably the biggest vocal group in the U.S. in the 2010s, and before BTS came on the scene. Also, they were a long favorite of my middle kids, so I ended up hearing a bunch of their stuff and even saw them live at the Beacon in NYC. Very impressive, very impressive. And of course, at least one of their members is gay, and that's again a big thing with a lot of this vocal music as good for that. Which brings us to the 2020s, called The Great Divide. Where are boy bands? Well, like the rest of culture, the money is concentrated at the top tier bands, BTS and their Korean compatriots, or most of the legacy acts who have reunited. My research turned up several upstart boy bands from other places, including the US, the UK, and the Philippines, but none came close to measuring up to any of the bands I've mentioned so far. Bands like Why Don't We, NCT, SB19, Pretty Much, New Hope Club, December 10, and many more, they have all had some success, but nothing like the big boys. Because why? Again, money is consolidated at the top these days. That said, there are a handful of boy bands that first hit in the 2020s, and you won't be surprised that all of them are from Germany. Nope, kidding. South Korea. Again, the bonus M extra at patreon.com/music is not a genre. If you want to know all about K-pop, even beyond boy bands, that's where to go. The most interesting to me and the most indicative of how the Brockhampton model may be the new wave is Stray Kids. Started in 2017. 8 members, Bangchan, Lee No, Changbin, Hyunjin, Han, Felix, Seungmin, and IN. Former member Woo Jin left the band in 2019. 6 albums up to 2025, 4 Korean and 2 Japanese, all hit number 1 in those countries, respectively. And Korean albums all hit top 5 in the U.S. world. 2 of them hit number 1. And those 2 also hit number 1 U.S. main. Stray Kids are big. Tons of singles. Took them a while to chart anywhere but U.S. world. And I think it could be because, interesting fact, they self-produce. One of the reasons why I like them so much, because it makes it interesting. They're not part of a machine. Led by Bang Chan, who personally selected every member, all of this is very unusual in K-pop. Almost every single has been top 10 U.S. world. Started charting in Korea in 2021 and have had several top 40, 3 top 20, and 1 top 10 there. Have done so-so in the U.S. main with 5 charting, but none in the top 40. But don't forget their albums charted high. No actual solo careers. The personality really shines through their production. It's both tight and loose, which is how I think my production is. It's in the way, to me, only indie production can be that, except for the very best producers. Runs the range, but is generally electro-pop. Next band up, Tomorrow by Together, where the by is X, Tomorrow X Together, Tubatu or TXT. Another I actually have heard of. 2019 they started. One of the smaller Korean groups, numbering only 5. Yeonjun, Subin, Byumgyu, Taehyun, and Hwaninkai. Formed by one of the big music companies there. 7 albums through 2025, 4 Korean and 3 Japanese. All went to number 1 in their respective countries. Some even crossed between those countries. 6 went top 5 U.S. world with 3 number 1s. 3 went top 5 U.S. main, with the last 2 Korean albums hitting number 3 U.S. main. They haven't had many giant hits, but a general point about all of my chart reporting is that I'm using the Billboard charts, and none of it reflects streaming, which can be very different from what the Billboard charts say. I guess I'm more of a traditionalist in that way because I've always loved the Billboard charts. But there are times, like I did with my international episode, where I will refer to the streaming numbers because I think they're more indicative of where music is. And it doesn't ever really seem to often correspond with the charts because some weren't even released as official singles. So look at streaming for these, every artist I mentioned. And that said, their highest charting Korean hit was this year, Stick With You. So this is a band that I think Tomorrow by Together is up and coming. I've also had several top 10 U.S. world hits, including 4 number 1s. They sound like EDM with electro-pop, all of it funky. In some ways, almost a boy band throwback sound, and I like it. Again, I like it the way I like Stray Kids, but for different reasons. Seems more interesting to me than BTS's production, which itself is not bad. All members have released solo work, with Yeonjun having the only great success. Finally, we have NHYPEN, also Korean, of course. Started in 2020 through a competition show. 6 members, Jae, Jake, Sunghoon, Sunwoo, Jungwon, and Nikki. So another Nick. Originally a 7-piece ensemble, Hee Seong left the group in 2026. That's this year. He left it in March. 3 albums so far, 2 Korean and 1 Japanese. All went number 1 Korea. And both went number 1 U.S. world, those 2 Korean albums, and number 11 and number 1 in U.S. main. So again, this is an up-and-coming band, unless they're just bandwagoning, the fans are bandwagoning because of the BTS. But I think listen for NHYPEN. Singles aren't scoring, it's super high on the Korean chart, but number 1 or 2 on the Japanese charts. All Korean singles have hit top 15 U.S. world, with 6 in the top 5. And their most recent single from this year, Knife, is their only number 1 outside of Japan. But really good song. Generally a darker and harder sound than 2010's boy bands. This is where a lot of the boy bands are trending. I like the direction. They're more Brockhampton than BTS, let's say that. No solo careers yet, other than the guy who left. And again, final mention of the bonus MXtra, patreon.com/music is not a genre, on the history of K-pop. That wraps it for my 2-episode decade by decade coverage of the boy bands. Let's get to conclusions. First of all, another breath. I'm getting dizzy because I've been talking for hours and need water. But boy, this was as exhaustive as part one, and I hope you're enjoying it. As mentioned, after the peak era and a slow period, boy band energy shifted heavily away from the U.S., though these bands were more or less taking U.S. as the cue in concept and style and sound. More boy bands emerged from outside the U.S. starting in the 2010s, and by the end of that decade, the influence did too. So now it's the reverse, where K-pop bands are influencing U.S., where they got originally their influence from the U.S. This trend would continue and eventually explode to the point where the U.S. has really faded from the boy band game, at least for now. From One Direction to BTS, the shift was complete, and non-U.S. boy band acts now rule everywhere, including here. At the same time, a quiet shift started happening and still happening. The mega boy bands are taking the spotlight, while independent and smaller boy bands are redefining the genre, getting more experimental. Yet again. By the end of this decade we're in, I predict there will be at least one boy band who rises up and influences a change in the form, and it won't be BTS. Even though I like them, I'm not dissing BTS because I don't like them. I'm saying, in comparison, there are some other bands from Korea that to me are just sonically more interesting, even though I do enjoy BTS. But let's do a complete summary of the evolution, starting with a bit of a recap from what I covered last week. In the 1920s to 40s, it was close harmony, built around tight, intimate harmonies and mic technique, befitting the studio limitations and emphasis on live music at the time. We're talking barbershop roots, jazz phrasing, early pop standards, the Mills Brothers, the Ink Spots. 1950s and 60s, doo-wop to soul, sophistication. They started following the general rock and roll trend of appealing to teens while integrating a wider range of influences, and their performances had more energy and movement. Gospel influences coming in thousands of bands, like the Platters, Drifters, Coasters, Four Seasons. 1970, soul roots and soft pop polish. There was a split. So you had soul bands like the Jackson 5, and you had soft pop like, let's say, the Hudson Brothers. I don't know. Or Jackson 5 with the Osmond Brothers or the Bay City Rollers. 1980s, transitioning to pop spectacle, the decade when the boy band truly first emerged as a standalone cultural phenomenon. By the end of the 80s, all the elements were in place to set the stage for every future boy band so far. Choreography, image, fan culture. Each band member had a different personality. Talking a new edition, new kids on the block. First of a kind, really. And that was the recap of last week's episode. And what about what we covered this week? 1990s, peak formula. Pop and R&B mixed together, maximalism, honed and perfected, and this decade, especially the latter half, still reigns as the quintessential boy band era. Tight vocal arrangements, huge hooks, layered, radio-dominant, pristine mixes, industrial-scale pop precision and emotional directness. You had early on Boyz II Men, and then you had Backstreet Boys NSYNC, 98 Degrees O-Town. So many peak bands. 2000s, fragmentation and urban influence. B2K and Blue incorporated more hip-hop, club beats, and contemporary R&B as the form was shifting. Bringing back some of the 70s rock templates for bands, like Jonas Brothers, while expanding the sound in many directions. But traditionally, boy bands were falling out of favor, so solo careers became with greater focus, like Justin Timberlake. More individuality within the group, heavier beats, less orchestral pop. Boy bands adapt or dissolve into solo careers. Jonas Brothers, the start of, slower period brought out other templates, including starting in the next decade, Big Time Rush, people like that. 2010s, indie pop sensibility and globalization. The genre was revitalized, but overseas. In the UK, and then eventually South Korea, breathing in new life and influence and giving it a place to go. Literally. Authentically narrative, songwriting, involvement from the members, genre blending, streaming era flexibility. They were less framed manufacturing, more relatable band, even for the ones who are manufactured. One Direction and BTS are good examples. 2020s, post-genre and platform-driven, music continues to evolve, breaking away somewhat from the soft pop of the previous decade and expanding into new areas and paradigms. The haves bands continue to rely on mostly old forms, BTS, while the have-nots bands, BTS and the legacy bands, while the have-nots bands have been quietly reinventing, setting the stage for something new in the 2030s. Constant content, fan ecosystems, maximalist, but also experimental. boy bands as multimedia systems. BTS, of course, Stray Kids. Lots of variation and evolution through these decades, and whatever the changes, though, the basic boy band elements have remained consistent. Harmonized voices and curated identity, stagecraft extraordinaire with both dance and the clothing, distinct personalities and solo efforts. Solo stars from Michael Jackson to Bobby Brown to Johnny Gill to Justin Timberlake to Nick Carter to Harry Styles to Jungkook. Despite the common elements, I hope I've shown there's far more variety in this genre than it seems from the outside. And it's worth a listen. Also, one thing boy bands have driven home is that a good song is a good song. Something I always believe. They will endure no matter where they come from, these songs. Yes, they can all be classified as kind of middle of the road, trying to hit the largest audience, which how you define pop songs mostly. And because of that, the songs never get too risque. They never curse. And the sound never gets too aggressive. It never gets too dark. At worst, it's pandering. It's bland. But at its best, it hits all the marks good music should and is as memorable as so-called more respectable music. And finally, let's not forget that there are a bunch of vocal groups I didn't cover in either episode or that I won't cover in next week's girl group episode because they either weren't strictly boy bands like Take Six or weren't all men, not just pentatonics, though. You have Manhattan Transfer, A-Teens, Swedish, S Club 7, who are British, and KARD, who are Korean. And that includes the hundreds of boy bands from different regions and countries who were just only regionally successful, especially those who did sing English. Props to all of them, but there's just not enough time to cover everything. That said, if I missed a band you think deserves mention, comment and I'll include it in a future catch-up episode. Here are my favorites from each decade. From the 20s to 40s, and I'm talking, yes, both episodes, my favorites from each era, right? So from the 20s to 40s, the Mills Brothers beat out the Ink Spots just by a hair. From the 50s, it's very, very hard because I grew up with that music through my dad. But I'll say the Platters. The 60s is tough because it's transitional, because it's proto, because you can't really count most of who was there as boy bands or even vocal groups. But I'm going to say the Monkees because they were proto. Now, 70s, I got to say Jackson 5. The 80s, hands down, New Edition. Hands down. I might say that overall, they're still my favorite boy band. But I don't know. 90s, got to go with Boyz II Men. Got hometown heroes. The 2000s, I'm going to say Jonas Brothers. I did enjoy them, but there wasn't much else there. 2010s, to me, was a tie between Big Time Rush and One Direction, only because my kids, Big Time Rush, One Direction was just there and renewed my interest in boy bands. And the 20s, surprise, surprise, Stray Kids are my favorite from this decade so far. What are your favorites? I'd like to know. Though this genre is not a top 5 fave for me, it might very well be top 10, and it's been influencing me since at least New Edition. Early recordings of mine were compared by my bandmates to boy band type music back when I was heavily pop. I have tons of respect for the production, the performance, and the songwriting quality overall. Speaking of songwriting quality, the featured song. So some reminders from last episode. Been a fan of boy band music for decades, been influenced by them off and on for that long. I did not always show that influence, but I've been embracing it more lately. There are back-to-back songs on Rek's recent album KITE to CAMDEN, tracks 4 and 5, that clearly show this. Both of those songs are top 2 from the singles collection, which is Rek's newest album. nickdamadio.com/music, please check it out, or /discography. Last week's featured song was the first one, All On Me, which is the most streamed song on Spotify right now for Rek. This week, the pick is Almost Everything About You. It is the most blatantly boy band thing I have done since 2015's maybe Any Universe, but especially since my early 20s. It stemmed from a soundtrack music that was completely different sounding, and I repurposed it. I thought the lyrics were placeholders because they're kind of jokey, but then I realized that joke is actually a very accurate portrait of how some people's relationships are. It is, I love almost everything about you. You know, now this guy is much more equivocal than anybody in a really healthy relationship would be. I probably wouldn't live without you. Don't ever go too far away because I need you like every other day. I love almost everything about you. So you can laugh at it because you should, but at the same time, there's a lot of truth there for a lot of relationships. This is one of the highlights of my upcoming KITE to CAMDEN live video album presentation, June 13th at Area 141st Bar in Manhattan, East Village. And by now, I think by the airing of this, there'll be a music video up from that. That's going to be part of the backdrop for that show. You can stream this song, Almost Everything About You, at nickdimatteo.com/discography or recarea.bandcamp.com. Or you can listen to it in a minute. Please do both. Please stream. It really helps out artists. Questions. Were you into boy bands during their peak? Did you expect them to come back this strongly? Are you a fan of any of the non-US boy bands that have dominated since the 2010s? And where do you think boy bands are headed? I would love to know your answers to these and all other questions because, as always, my objectives here are music, conversation, and connection. Thank you for hanging with me for this mega double episode that I've been dying to do for years. And next week, I'll be talking about girl groups.
I love almost everything about you.